Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Today I'm honored to bring you my guest, Colonel Allen West, at the National Religious Broadcasting Convention. Colonel Allen West is a Christian, constitutional conservative, combat veteran, and a former member of the U.S. Congress. He served in the military for 21 years and received numerous awards and decorations, including the Bronze Star, Meritorious Service Medal, and Army Commendation Medal. After retiring from the Army, West taught U.S. history and coached track and field at Deerfield Beach High School in Florida. In 2008, he entered politics as the Republican nominee for Florida's 22nd Congressional District, losing to the Democratic incumbent, Ron Klein. However, he won the seat in 2010 midterm elections. In 2020, Allen West became the new state chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, and on June 4, 2021, announced his resignation. Colonel Allen West is the author of We Can Overcome, an American Black Conservative Manifesto. Colonel West, thank you so much for joining me here today.
My pleasure to be with you, Rachael, and you forgot the most important part.
Tell me what?
We're both Kansas State Wildcats.
I could not believe that we are both purple-blooded.
EMA
all the way.
Every man a Wildcat, that's
I
right.
love it. And
yes.
my grandparents are from Manhattan, and I always remember all of the practice bombing happening at Fort Riley, where you said you were stationed.
Yep, I was stationed there at Fort Riley from 1988 to 1991. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, I was deployed to Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm from Fort Riley in the 1st Infantry Division, and that's when I went over after that and began teaching ROTC at Kansas State.
Thank you so much for your service.
My pleasure.
I really, really appreciate that and everything that you have given to our country. I think that there is a bond there between law enforcement and the military and just what you sacrifice and what your family's sacrifices.
Yes, we're both guardians.
Yeah, that means so much.
Yeah.
So the thing that really stood out to me in your bio was about your Bronze Star, and that might be a hard place to start your story, but would you tell me a little bit about your service?
Look, my service goes back to my dad, who was a corporal in the United States Army. He served in World War II. My older brother was a Marine in Vietnam. He served there, and, I was challenged by my dad at the age of 15 to be the first officer in the family, and my nephew is now serving. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, 3 combat tours of duty.
Is incredible.
So that's just what we do in our family: service, sacrifice, and commitment. And it's not about awards or rewards or whatever. It's about the duty. It's about the oath that you take to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's it.
I felt like I heard a motto in there. Did you say service, sacrifice, and commitment?
Absolutely.
Wow, that is just such a powerful statement right there. And what brought you in your family culture to embody that? I mean, that's not just like in the air, like humidity, right? Yeah. Like that's something that you train up in your children.
Well, it says in Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way that they should go, so when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. And so when you have, a dad like I had that served this great nation at a time when it did not see him as being equal to others, but he never held anything against this nation. And I remember him saying that there's no greater honor than to wear the uniform of the United States of America. And you think about what he set forth from his humble service in World War II, like I said, with my older brother who served in combat in Vietnam as a Marine, myself, and now my nephew, his grandson. So that's what it is all about, what we pass down from generation to generation. And I think that America is always going to be a great nation. Our communities are always going to be strong as long as we continue to raise the next generation of young men and young women that understand what it means to put your life on the line for something that is greater than yourself.
Something greater than yourself. I think that that's huge. There's a cultural trend, right? That the single sum is the individual, right? Yeah. That there's nothing more valuable than the individual, whether it be the family or the culture or the community at large. And I think that that's really powerful to be able to see the value of the larger group.
Well, it has to be that way. And you think about over the years, that's what has sustained these United States of America. And I know that your husband was a law enforcement agent, and you think about those law enforcement officers that every day they're committed to making sure that our communities are safe and that people can lay their heads down at night. And it all comes back to a couple of scriptures from the Bible. For me, it's Isaiah 6 and 8. When Isaiah is standing there before the host of the Lord, and the Lord says, "Whom shall we send? Who will go for us?" And Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." And so you think about soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, law enforcement agents, that's what they say. "Here am I, send me."
Wow.
And then, of course, the other verse is John 15:13, where it says, "There's no greater love that a man has than to lay down his life for his friends or for another." And that's the kind of the code that we live by. Like I said, the service, the sacrifice, and the commitment, which is a model after Jesus Christ.
Yes, it is. When I was taking my children to see Grandma yesterday, I was wearing a T-shirt that said "No Greater Love," and that's been kind of the motto that we have branded our Micah shirts with, that he laid down his life for his partner. And, we talk about people's deaths being senseless, that their loss didn't matter.
Yeah.
And I would say that I would stand in stark contrast against that it's their death and their sacrifice that actually is the glue that holds our nation together.
It is, and that's the important thing of a day like Memorial Day, which should be every day. But whenever I speak on Memorial Day, I tell those of us that are still on this side of the grass that our challenge is to tell the stories of those that are pushing up the grass now.
Yeah.
To challenge people to go walk among the gardens of stone where the ground is fertilized by the blood of those who made the sacrifice and is watered by the tears of those who have lost their loved ones. And so if we continue to tell those stories and not let certain individuals or certain ideologies go out and retell their history or revise their history or completely eliminate their history, then we will preserve that which is great about this country. And it's just the same that we face with our Christian faith. If we don't go out as strong Christians and talk about our faith and talk about that person that gave his life for us, Jesus Christ, then we will not do what he said in the Great Commission, was for us to go out and make disciples. We will not live up to what he said, from the cross, is that if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. Well, how do we continue to make sure that he is lifted up? By our voices every day.
Wow. That's so eloquent and so beautiful. I love the way that you talked about the tears and the blood that have been invested, that have been sown.
Absolutely.
On our behalf of those of us who are still here. You also talked a little bit about historical revisionism and people creating a new narrative. Would you tell me more about that?
Well, I think that's what we see right now, and the challenge for this country is this critical race theory and all of the changing and revision of history. One of the important things being here in Texas is the Alamo, because we remember the defenders of the Alamo.
Right.
But there was a book that just came out earlier this month that is entitled "Forget the Alamo: The Rise and Fall of an American Myth."
Wow.
And so you think about, here that was written by 3 individuals in Texas. That just completely, tries to undermine and destroy the heroic efforts, the heroism of those men, 183 for 13 days, who stood against 3,000, that enable us to be here in the Lone Star State. So if we continue to allow people to revise this history, to tell us because of the fact that your skin color is a certain way, that you are you're a hateful person, you're an oppressor, and because my skin color is a little bit different, I'm a victim and I'm oppressed. That's not, who we are as Americans. And so we have got to make sure that we're telling the right history, the good, bad, the ugly, the indifferent, so that we learn from it, and we don't allow people to say that they're going to be the arbiters of what is told as far as history.
I'm hearing a lot about critical race theory right
Absolutely.
now in culture and mainstream media. Could you describe that a little bit for us?
Well, what I just said, critical race theory basically says if you have skin color that is white, you're bad.
Okay.
And if you have skin color that is black, you're a victim. And I refuse to believe in that because, again, the men and women that I served with in uniform, it wasn't about the skin color. It was about one single thing, the oath that they took to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Just the same as with your husband. It wasn't about skin color. It was about that person that stood with them on the thin blue line to make sure that they protected the communities, and they lived up to their oath to serve and protect. So when we have this new Marxism that really becomes a religious belief for some people to try to separate and divide us based upon racial lines, that's not a good and healthy thing for our country.
So we just recently passed Juneteenth.
Yeah.
And I saw a meme, and it was very powerful. The picture was of the image of potential slaves who had chosen to jump into the ocean instead of become slaves. And the meme said something, it's so interesting because there's so many powerful words and ideas out there with a little bit of truth in them, and then just enough of a lie that take you off course and off course and off course. And what the meme said is that slavery never ended, it just transformed. If you were to hear someone say that to you, what would you say in response?
Well, first of all, when I think about Juneteenth and what it means out here in Texas, it's an emancipation day. It's a day when we break the bonds of physical enslavement. That's what it represented. But when you look at some of the early blacks that were, enslaved here and then became free in Texas, their lives were not defined by what they were. Their lives were defined about what they thought they could become. And so you think about, like State Senator Matthew Gaines, a black man who was a state senator here in the Republican Party of Texas, and the fact that he was instrumental in the founding of Texas A&M University and Prairie View A&M University. You think about State Representative G.T. Ruby. You think about some of the early successful businessmen that were here. So we should not be looking back and trying to have a continuous slave mentality, because I think that is a way that people try to continue to elevate and exert power and control over you. And in many ways, this new slavery that you see, this economic enslavement that you see, is very dangerous because it destroys your will, it destroys your determination, it destroys your drive. And if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be more than a conqueror. You're not supposed to be a victim. You're supposed to be above all of that. And the only thing that you're supposed to be a slave to is your love of Jesus Christ and his gospel and his word, not slave to another man.
So I think, when we have limiting beliefs, when we have places where we are stuck, which is what I'm hearing you say, is that we are stuck in a mindset of victimhood. What is the win? And you said to me, the win for someone is to maintain power and control over a group of people. Who gets the win here? Where is the power and control, and what do they have to gain from keeping people in this mentality of slavery?
Well, it becomes the new plantation, where if you keep people on that new plantation, you are empowered, and it's kind of like, as long as you keep grievances in front of people, and they continue to buy into the grievances, they continue to buy into being a victim, they elevate you into a position of power over them, and you always get to stay in that position of power. And to me, that's the most heinous thing, is that you're not looking at people and trying to help them to elevate themselves, to help them to, the motto of the United States Army when I came in was be all you can be. That should be the focus of what we do for subsequent generations, not keep them, trapped in some socio-economic plantation where they're continually seeing themselves generation upon generation as being enslaved or being a victim or, things along that nature. And that's very traumatic when you run into young people that believe there's nothing that I can do. There's no place that I can go. I will always be stuck in this community, this neighborhood, this way of life. The second, third generation welfare, the second and third generation that every single day they wake up in Section 8 housing. It's not what my dad taught me. It's not what my mom taught me. And I think that we need to do better in saying, once again, that we're victors and not victims.
I mean, we talked about how you can have this piece of truth and it looks so powerful, and yet if there's enough of a lie, it will take you off of alignment over time. And you're telling me that your family motto, service, sacrifice, and commitment, and that are 4 generations in now. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And the thing is, when you talk about the minute lie, it's just the same as when you're out, back in the day before GPS and all of this stuff, when you had a compass and you had a map.
Yeah.
Well, you had to set your azimuth on that compass, and you had to stay true to that azimuth. But if all of a sudden you deviate 1 degree off of that azimuth, and you continue to deviate 1 degree off that azimuth, the next thing you know, you're so far off the original path that you're supposed to be going on, and it's just because of 1 degree.
Yeah.
And so we've got to make sure we always have the course correction, because 1 degree over a period of time can become 10 degrees, 15, 20 degrees, and then you're lost.
Right.
And I think that that's what we see happening in, sadly, many of our inner city communities. And I grew up in the inner city. But when you decimate the family, when you undermine the Judeo-Christian faith heritage, when you try to replace God with the big G with government with a little g, and that's where people put their faith.
God for government. Yeah, that'll preach.
Yeah. And now you see where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've seen this generational spread, right? And we have your family and your investment in this country. I'm hearing you believe in this country. You committed yourself to it politically, which is probably a different sacrifice, right?
No, but it's a right sacrifice. And so I would always ask people, show me a country where a kid like me, born in 1961 in a blacks-only hospital, can grow up and become a battalion commander in the United States Army, command 600 troops in combat, become a member of the United States House of Representatives, become the chairman of the largest state Republican Party in the United States of America, all from starting off in a blacks-only hospital. It doesn't happen anywhere else. It happens here because if you believe in the fundamentals of this country, if you see yourself as a victor or not a victim, if you have 2 parents in the home that train you up in the way that you should go so that when you grow old, you shall not depart from it, then this is the result.
So I have a couple theories on this. Can I bounce them off of you? Because
I have a really hard head, so it's going to bounce pretty good. So.
I have 2 theories about this. I think one of the things that we're really struggling with in these differentiations of mindset is fatherlessness.
Huge issue.
That we do not have many 2-parent homes in the African American communities.
24% now.
Wow.
It used to be 77 when I was born.
That is incredible. And the other theory that I have that I want to bounce off of you and just kind of have this mutual conversation is that African tribalism is an oral tradition, right? They pass down their history through stories from one tradition or from one generation to the next. And I know about vicarious trauma, right? When you hear of the trauma of someone coming before you, you yourself create a traumatic experience around it. You create a mental imagery. You create the sensation as if it's happening in your own body. And that's how these traditions have been passed down from generation to generation. And when you look at how stuck we are, right, and so radically opposed, I mean, we've seen it in 2020, right? Like, we can't be friends. We can't have a conversation. We can't even communicate if you're in a different political party than I am, which is absolutely not going to bring anyone together or cause any kind of positive outcome on either side, really, right? Like, both places have stuck their heels into the ground. And so I just say that we have got to have these conversations about it. But I have this perception that we told this story over and over in such a way that we've continued to traumatize the incoming generations. And, I can tell from your story, and we haven't got there yet, and I hope that we do in one of these episodes that we're recording, but I know that you know trauma because you've seen combat and you've received awards for that. And so one of the questions that you even bring to the table here is, what do you do for the healing of that trauma? Like, how do you run towards that roar, embrace that pain?
Sure. That's a very tough thing. One of the things they teach you in the military is you move to the sound of the guns when you're in combat. Now, when I was a battalion commander and my assignment was here in Fort Hood, Texas, I pulled the troops together because there were only 2 individuals in this entire battalion had previously been in combat. It was myself and my senior enlisted command sergeant major. And what I tried to get them to understand is the person that you are here. When you set foot on that airplane that's going to take you over there, you got to leave that person here. Because you're going to be called upon to be a different person. You're going to be a warrior. You're trained to do this. But the other thing is that when your mission over there is over, you've got to really work hard. The person that you were over there, leave them there when you get on the plane to come back over here. And you have to reestablish and refine that person that you were here. And that's hard.
Yeah, that
for a
sounds
lot of
really
people
hard.
to be able to do, is to be able to separate themselves and almost compartmentalize. And that takes a really strong faith to be able to do it. And I think that's, again, why it's so important that, in law enforcement, in the military, that you are rooted in a strong faith. Now, coming back to what you said as far as the oral history and telling the traditions, my dad and mom were born in 1920 and 1931 respectively and grew up down south. But my dad and mom did not share the stories of their upbringing to try to, cast their pain onto me.
That's not the intent.
No, the intent was to just say, hey, this is history. This is what we went through. Because you have to learn from history in order to make sure you don't repeat it. But what they would always reinforce, and one of my dad's great sayings was that, son, you go out and you find out what the standard is, and you commit yourself to exceed it. Because no one can really hold you back. The only thing that can hold you back is your own mentality. And so I think, again, when we're talking about these oral histories, when I talk to my daughters, it's not the oral history of you being a victim. It's my oral history to go out there and say, there is nothing that you cannot achieve. And as a matter of fact, what does it say in Philippians 4:13? I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. And so, again, I think if this country can get back to its strong faith heritage, and I think if this country gets back to its fundamental principles and values, and the Christian community has an important part to play today, because with all the pain that is out there right now, people are looking for us, the body of Christ, to be strong.
There's just so much richness in what you're saying, and so much depth. I think about the gift that you had to have that 2-parent home, and that they gave you a worldview, right? They gave you a filter that you could put that story through. And I think that, I was raised by a single parent, and I've become a single parent even against my own will, right? And that sometimes when you're just in survival mode, that you don't either, you do the best that you can with what you have at the time, and you don't know what you don't know. Right? And so I don't believe that people are intending to pass on a tradition of trauma to their children, but it is the experience that they're having, and there's no grid, there's no worldview, there's no perspective that gives that kind of a boundary, because I think that's the thing about trauma, is the feeling like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
In loss with my husband, it's like, is this pain always going to be like this? And the feeling that it might be in and of itself is overwhelming and collapsing. And something I'd like to pick up with you in our next episode is just how do we build that framework? How do we build that worldview? Because, I have a passion to bridge the gap between the public and the police, right? That the idea that, that the public isn't safe and the police is out to get them, right? And both sides have reasonable arguments, have places of reasonable argument. And there's both sides that have blind spots and need to do work to move towards each other. And so when we pick up this next episode, would it be okay if we continue that and you kind of talk to me more about the framework in this next oncoming episode?
Sure.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick and my incredible guest, Colonel Alan West. He is the author of the book We Can Overcome, an American Black Conservative Manifesto. And Mr. West, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or get a hold of your content?
It's all the social media platforms that are out there, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Alan West for Texas, and then also I work at a place, a Christian Ministry Center called the Hope Center, and you can see me at thehopecenter.org.
Thehopecenter.org. As the host of the Hopecast, I'm pretty sure that the Hope Center is a pretty amazing place. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me today at the NRB, and you can hear all the fun we're having in the background. You can connect with me at www.rachelflick.com and on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and pretty much everywhere else. Everybody, look forward to connecting with you next week. Send me any questions that you have at contact@rachelflick.com.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.